Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. I'm your host, Mel Albin, and I want to introduce you to the Power Hour for those people who are new to the station and to the show. I created the Power Hour because I wanted people to understand the process of music, the music that you love, not just hearing it, attending a performance or a concert, but getting behind the mind and understanding the dedication, the time, effort, and talent that musicians and songwriters and vocalists have to bring you the wonderful music that runs the gamut from smooth jazz to jazz crossover to R&B and soul. Anything that's tangentially connected to jazz, we play on the station, and we play jazz 24/7. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the artists that we've had on the show in the past. Let me first tell you one more thing before I move on to that. Source Radio is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we depend on the money that we get from donors, from listeners, and also from the artists who we support on our show, and in turn, they support us. So music is the core of Source TV Radio. The other mission we have is to help small Black businesses and minority businesses who don't have access to radio or the internet the way we do. And we want to promote them to build them to the point where they get on the radar of financial institutions and the Small Business Administration, and that they can build generational wealth to strengthen their communities. So equality and equity is the other thing that we stress on the Source TV network. Those are our two major missions, but music is at our core. The Power Hour has had over 125 artists, some of whom I know you recognize: Eric Roberson, Mesa, Brian Culbertson, Paul Brown, Raheem Devon, Reagan Whiteside, Alex Harris, Greg Adams, Tom Brown, Costello, Pieces of a Dream, Kamasi Washington, Keiku Matsui, Kim Scott, Sheryl Crow, Billy Ocean, Annie Lennox, Dwelle, Blake Aaron, Terry Wollman, Her, Celine Johnson, Erin Stevenson, Cecily, the late Bobby Caldwell, Tammy McCann, Jeff Beck, Eric Burden, Mickey Howard, and many more. That's just to give you an idea of the diversity of the artists we've had on. Tonight, we have another great artist for you. He's a top Billboard artist, musician, composer, and producer, known especially for his trademark ultra-melodic, funky, infectious vibes. Over the years, he has worked with greats like George Clinton, The Temptations. He wrote Keep Rollin' on George Benson's 1998 album, Standing Together, and the guitar legend returned the favor by recording a duet on his 1988 debut CD, Blue Planet. His solo career really took off in 2005 with his hit song Pacific Coast Highway. It stayed at #1 on the radio charts for 11 weeks and was named by Billboard as the most heavily played track in smooth jazz format over the past 15 years. He's also been in film, and his film and TV credits include producing music for independent films like Beyond the Ring, working as music editor on Lakeshore, featured films Pathology and Meat Train, as well as on Fox sitcom Undeclared, and being music editor and standing composer for the show's Weeds for several years. He has done the underlying music score for the Independent Spirit Award for several years. He has accumulated close to 25 Billboard hits in the top 10 of the charts, as well as for other artists as a writer and producer. So, I think you're going to love his music and love the person. So please welcome tonight our special guest, Nils Nils Jiptner.
Hi.
Hey, Neil.
Thanks for having me, Mel.
It's my pleasure. I've been wanting you on this show for a long time, and I finally got up the courage to contact you.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. I'd like to start off the show, Niels, by asking my artists to tell everybody what's cooking. What can they expect from you for the rest of 2024 and into 2025?
Well, for this year, we have some nice shows coming up. I just got back from rehearsal. As a matter of fact, this Sunday we're playing Spaghettini. It's one of the main smooth jazz, contemporary jazz clubs in Los Angeles. And then in November, I'm going to be in Cancun at the Cancun Jazz Festival. A week later, I'm going to be in New Orleans at a festival. And in December, I'm going to be in Texas with various states, San Antonio and Dallas. So I got some nice shows coming up. And then I hope for next year that we're really going to expand the live part. I just got a new agent who has been more aggressive and getting more out there and doing more live shows on a regular basis is my goal for the coming year. I'm now we're gonna pretty soon start the second single of the current album. For me, that's a marker that I'm gonna have to start writing for the next record. Because it takes a while, to come up with something that's good, and I'm setting my standards so high that's getting harder and harder to match my own expectations. So I definitely got to get in gear and start working on that, and that's going to keep me busy really for the next year and a half.
Wonderful. You have a lot going on. I know Spaghettini's. It's a great place for smooth jazz.
Yeah.
Yep. So I want to just spend some time. I know many people out there want to know about an artist's background. How did you become Nils? So, I know that you were born in Munich, Germany.
That's right.
And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your family, what kind of music was in the household, what kind of music you listened to, and what was the city's influence on you as you grew from a child into an adolescent?
Yeah, I mean, at home, my parents listened, Sunday breakfast, we had always classical music. And I wasn't particularly fond of it. In retrospect, though, I recognize that it really probably helped my development of musical form and compositional understanding, even on the subconscious level, because I was exposed to it so much. But personally, once I became a teenager, I wanted to listen to rock and roll. My first guitar hero was Ritchie Blackmore from Deep Purple.
Mm-hmm.
And my very first concert, as a matter of fact, was his band Rainbow. And an opening act was an unknown band from Australia called AC/DC. At that time.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. So, I was into that kind of stuff. But growing up in Munich at that time, it was the 70s, we didn't have radio. So for us to learn about music was only through word of mouth and hanging out in record stores. It was still vinyl days. So we went to spend days in record stores checking out album covers, the credits, who's playing on the record, and so forth. And that's how we learned about new music.
Why didn't you have radio? Why didn't you have radio?
There were 5 stations. One was Umpapa, one was classic. One was, I don't know, just kind of like a news station. And the other ones were everything mixed up. There was maybe one show a week. There was like Casey Kasem's American Top 40 show. And that we didn't hear any popular music on the radio in those days. Not the stuff that we liked. It was maybe for the older generation, German Schlager music, which is like the worst kind of pop music you can think of, really cheesy kind of stuff.
Were the stations state controlled, or were they private?
I guess it was state controlled first. There was only 4 licenses given out to a big. I'm not quite sure how the legal part worked back then, and we didn't understand it. We just lived with the fact that, and there was no internet either in those days.
Yeah.
So seriously, the only way we could learn about music is by word of mouth and by going to record stores. And I remember my evolution musically. We went, started playing rock and roll. It was my first influence. Then I got I was in the band that played like progressive rock, we called it, melodic rock.
Right.
And they broke up, and the drummer asked me, "Hey, Nils, do you want to start a funk band?" And I said, "What is funk?" I'm almost like 16 years old at that age and never heard of that. And he brings me over to this bass player's house. He had a collection like along like this wall of albums from Ohio players to Commodores to Earth, Wind & Fire to George Clinton. And I remember the first thing he put on was Get Away with Earth, Wind & Fire. And I lost my mind. I said, this is incredible. I love every note I hear. And I didn't even know this existed. I felt like a kid in the candies, given the keys to a candy store.
Right.
So for the next years, I got totally dove in and learned all these rhythm guitar licks from Al McKay and Paul Jackson Jr. and Ray Parker, and totally got lost in that. And
let's go back. How'd you get into the guitar? We didn't cover that.
First I wanted to become a soccer star. And there was too much running involved. I figured I could get just as many girls being a rock star. So I switched to the guitar. I played in a high school band, and I started skipping soccer practice for band practice and kind of switched my focus in those days.
Did you have formal training, or were you doing it by ear?
No, I had a few lessons. There was a guy offering after-school guitar lessons. I had a few private lessons, and then for some years I had just hung out with another friend who was more advanced, and I learned from him. And then I took some more guitar lessons after that, and then I kept taking lessons all through my high school, the rest of my high school years up to college, and until I came here to the United States. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the culture of Munich. If you didn't have radio to hear music, were there clubs that were playing jazz and rock and roll? Were they available?
We had in those days, we had club. You know what they would play and that we would dance for was stuff like Al Jarreau, Chaka Khan, Jeff Lorber Fusion, the first, stuff like the first Yellow Jackets album.
Okay.
And that kind of like the funky jazzy stuff that I'm still into today, And a lot of that stuff we learned about new records. Good example, Dave Grusin Mountain Dance. I don't know if you're familiar with the album cover. Dave Grusin, keyboard player. He's on the cover with the cowboy boots and a big Stetson hat, and it looked like your typical country record. And I looked at the back and I see Steve Gadd on drums, Marcus Miller on bass, Lee Rittenauer on guitar. That's no country record. I put it on, and it was a really wonderful contemporary jazz record. Yeah. So we educated ourselves on the sideman, on who is playing what style, and that's how we got introduced. Now I knew about Dave Grusin, which I never heard before. So we learned about these artists, and that's how we kind of followed the music along that we liked, and then we exchanged these ideas amongst each other, and that's how we learned about stuff.
Did you have any mentors that were helping to guide you at
all? Just my peers, really. I mean, there was really no guidance there on a specific thing. We were hanging out, and we were music was our life. We were listening to music all the time. But basically, we played our own records. We make tapes of the records for, we made. We would listen. I mean, it's different than today. It seems so. Music was more precious back then. For instance, nobody. My friend's house, nice guy, but nobody was allowed, even me, to touch his turntable and the record. You had to put the record on, because if you make a mistake, you get a scratch, and then once you're done playing the record, you put it back in the sleeve, back in the cover. now, and then I noticed, like, maybe a couple of decades later, when we were into CDs, my CDs are just laying on the floor or next to, not in the cases, like just a pile on top of it. We lost respect for the medium, and now we don't even have the medium anymore. So there was a different relationship. And for instance, the guy with the biggest stereo system, he was the most popular guy because we could really hear the sound there. Nobody would have ever dreamed to listen to music on some little tiny earbuds or a laptop speaker.
Well,
It would have been sacrilege.
Well, part of the difference too, when you wear earbuds, it's personal; it's not shared. And when you,
Right.
And that collective experience about music has vanished.
That's true.
Even when you go on the internet, you download it to stream through your earpods, but not to share it with everybody.
Lots more solitary, yeah.
Yeah.
No, we basically, that was our life. We would discuss music and musicians and we were living it. We were really into it, even though we were not exposed to the radio.
Well, you told me you played in the band in high school. You switched from soccer to band.
Yeah.
And when you went on to college, if I recall correctly, you went to college for engineering. Why wasn't it music?
They didn't have a music program in Munich. There was only classical.
Wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't into classical music, and they only took 3 guitar players a semester, and you had to be like a preferred student of the professor to get even in, and I had maybe a year or 2 classical training, but I was not on that level that I could have competed with these guys that tried to get in the conservatory. So I started going to a private music school, which was more down my lane, what I wanted to do.
I'm just. This is what interests me so much. Munich is a big city,
right?
And the fact that they were so narrow in music that it sounds like you had to struggle to even be able to find a place to study if it wasn't private.
That's right. I mean, music was not really, and my parents agreed with that sentiment, was not really a sensitive choice for a career back there. There's not that many German bands that made it internationally. I mean, you can name maybe a couple like the Scorpions, and maybe Nena had one hit with 99 Luftballons, and of course Kraftwerk and some singular bands, but you probably can count them on 1 or 2 hands. That really made it internationally.
Man, so for you to pursue music, you had to go to private, a conservatory or some other kind of institution in Munich, and they didn't do jazz or anything but classical.
Right.
Wow. I didn't realize that. So how did you start gigging? You started in Munich, you got a band together, and
my very first gig I was still in high school. It was like when I mentioned earlier the friend who I hung out with to learn guitar in the very beginning. He had a band, and I always would observe their rehearsals. I would sit in and just try to learn by watching what they do, and he would show me sometimes stuff. And then he had a gig, and he fired his rhythm guitar player 5 minutes before the show and pointed at me and said, "You play." That was my first gig ever in front of an audience. No, but then high school, we had a high school band. And then I had some original bands in Munich where we played clubs and bars, little stuff, nothing really on a bigger level yet,
When you went to college for engineering, was your heart still with music? That is really what you wanted to do, or hadn't that still was what your objective was?
Yeah, so that whole thing is, I went to Technical University of Munich. In Germany, the system is like you have high school, then you have 2 years of college phase, and then you go to university. So I finished high school with the college phase, and then I went to university to study electronics because I figured at least maybe I could go into electroacoustics or something musically sound involved or something. But I really didn't enjoy it. It just didn't seem like there was a valid option to do something else that would make sense for a career. And it wasn't until my parents actually moved to Puerto Rico. My dad got offered a good job over there. I already had moved out. I went to that university at that time, that I got up the guts and said, well, I'm going to quit this and I'm going to go full time to that private music school that I just had taken a couple lessons from before. And I'm going to pursue just becoming a musician. And then, of course, my parents cut my allowance right away. But at that time, and one of the student jobs we have over there, we used to drive a cab at night. In Germany, it was a safe thing. It's not like New York or something in Munich, you know. So it was a student job. You could work as much, as little as you like once you had the license and you passed the test. And whenever you want to work, you basically call them up. They have a cab for me, and you work as many hours as you like and get half the fare. So that's how I basically supported myself at night, driving the cab and during the day, going to music school and rehearsals with the band and stuff.
So your parents went to Puerto Rico. You went to study music.
Yeah.
And why did you leave Munich at that point? Well, when did you leave Munich?
Well, basically, my parents, you know, I was visiting them, of course, for Christmas and stuff a few times. And so they said, you know, that music school in Munich, that's not a real life career choice. You know, it's not professional enough. So I said, well, I heard about great schools in Los Angeles, which at that time was Musicians Institute.
Right.
And my parents said, well, send me some information. And so they afforded me to fly over there and study to Los Angeles. And that's how I came out here. I went to GIT in, was it 84, 85? And then once I was over here, I heard about the Grove School of Music, where I studied composition arrangement afterwards. And during that time, I met a guy who had a recording studio, so I started working as an engineer. And 30-some years later, I'm still here.
So when you started working as an engineer, where did you get that training?
I always was interested in recording and stuff, and it was a natural interest of mine. But yeah, I was fascinated by recording studios, but it was still 2-inch machines and all that stuff. And just being able to hang out, and I got the training basically doing it, working in the studio, first as a second engineer, where you basically just monitor stuff and you take notes and recall lists and all that kind of stuff. And then pretty soon I learned enough to run a session and know the board, how it works, and what all the output gear does. So, and I learned producing that way too, because I could watch what producers do, how they interact with the talent and all that kind of stuff.
So how did you? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So at the end of the day, I ended up with the keys for the studio because I was the main engineer. And that's when I started recording my very first record.
Okay.
So you could use the downtime.
About that.
Yeah.
Besides going to school and besides working as engineer in California, how did you get into the music community?
Well, my plan after school was to become one of these session cats, like a Mike Landau, Steve Lukather, or Dan Huff, like those guys who play everybody's record, or Paul Jackson Jr., you know. And I had a few sessions, but I didn't get lucky enough, and I noticed that I'm not good enough of a hustler. There were some other guys that out-hustled me, also for auditions and stuff like that. It wasn't a natural thing for me to do that, you know. Really, like I didn't like auditions or all that kind of stuff. So, but and that stuff I realized later, I could write songs. And I started writing my own stuff. I always wanted to have my own band. And at the end of the day, I started hiring all the guys I wanted to be like, you know. And they kept calling me up for work. And then it was some kind of like a natural transition that I didn't even plan for or realize till like years later when I really look back at my life, you know.
Well, I want to play some of your music for everybody. I kind of wanted to start off with Pacific Coast Highway that kind of jump started your solo career. But
Yeah.
before that, you had already done an album. Why don't you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that and how you got to Pacific Coast Highway?
Exactly. The Blue Planet album started in the studio. I recorded the first tracks in there, and I mean, it took me like 10 years to record the record. You got to
Wow.
imagine in those days, I didn't have unlimited studio time. I did have in that studio, but even a roll of 2-inch tape, you need maybe 2 to do a song, is $200. You know, I didn't really have. I worked in the studio. I gave a few guitar lessons, but I was basically a broke musician in LA, and I didn't have a lot of money. And then mixing a song costed $2,000. One song we paid $1,000 for the studio and $1,000 for the engineer, just for the mixing part. That's not even talking about the recording process or hiring musicians and all that kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of time and money and waiting for opportunities for this thing to come together, you know. And then it's a learning process. The first time I wasn't really that great yet. I actually had a different producer on my first record who really started pulling things together for me. And he saw my first recordings and he threw half of it out and loved other ones. And then we finished the record by pulling in other talent. And he brought me up from a difference where from playing little hole-in-the-wall clubs to actually doing my first theater show concert and putting me on stage with what they called Neels and the West Coast All-Stars. And my band at that time, that was 98, was horn section was Rick Braun, Eric Marienthal, and Everett Harp.
Wow.
I had Ricky Lawson on drums. I had who was on Bobby Lyle on piano.
Wow.
There was Kevin Ricard in percussion. Vocals, I had Phil Perry and the late Carl Anderson.
Oh, Phil Perry too.
And Sekou Bunch on bass. I mean, it was just an incredible band. It was like a whole different thing. When we first did that, it was like switching from a moped to a 1000cc Kawasaki, you know. And I had to grow up musically really, really quick just to keep up with, you know, my band, so to speak. And yeah, those were the first shows. And that album, but that album didn't see the light of day. And that I did get a record deal, but the record label filed bankruptcy when the record came out. And I didn't even know. And we didn't some of these shows. No, not because of the record. if it was just that, I would have been way more exposed if they had spent any money on it. Yeah. No, but it was to the point where we had this big Neils and the West Coast All-Star shows, and we promised the radio station. We rented the Fox Theater in Bakersfield. We did this ourselves.
Wow.
Promoted this. It was a very stressful undertaking. I mean, I was. That's a whole. We could take a whole day about telling you all this stuff. But we promised them 30 albums to give away everyone on the hour, so they could will announce the concert. Like the third caller gets a free CD. You know, the record label never sent the records, so I had to go to Tower Records to buy 30 of my own albums at retail cost, so I can give them away on the radio. And it just killed me, this experience. And
well, these are the kinds of stories that the public doesn't know about, how much dedication and difficulty it is to get to really where you want to go. It's not easy in the music industry at all.
It was horrible. It was, you know, it was. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It was. I don't know if any other way I would have gotten to the point where I'm at, so I cannot never discount it, but it was very, very stressful and tasking. And of course, we lost an arm and a leg financially on these shows. Fortunately, I had that hit with George Benson, that song on his record, and they paid me some nice royalties, but that all went, you know, for these endeavors.
So how did you get to Pacific Coast Highway?
Well, there was another 8 years later. I broke up with my friend and producer at the time. That stress just became too much, and I produced another CD that I really just thought would be a business card. a musical business card. I started working on commercials. I started producing one other artist, my first other artist that I produced, and stuff like that. I wanted to get into film writing more. And I had that CD out, and only 2 people heard it. It was a Rendezvous record, which was new at that time. And they liked it. And then my neighbor, I gave that girl guitar lessons. She said, "Oh, my parents have a record label." And they heard it, and they liked it. So after I thought I wanted to go with Rendezvous because it was a bigger name, but I would have been the first new artist that they broke. And after it got hard to get a hold of the people, I already realized it's going to be another, they might use me as a write-off. They don't really care about my career.
Exactly.
Maybe the small mom and pop label, they cannot afford just to throw money at the wall without doing anything. And so I went with them, and they released the first single, which was Pacific Coast Highway. And it just kept climbing up the chart. I get this call, we're in the charts. Wow. We're in the top 10. We're on number 5. Till we hit number 1, and we stayed there. And it was just unbelievable.
So you were surprised. You didn't expect it.
I know it was a great song, but it would never. You're never prepared for something like that,
right?
And it was so. The same week I signed the record deal with Baha Tizar, which is still my label at this today. I was up for my first scoring gig as a composer, and it was some B movie that some bimbo produced. Her sugar daddy gave her money to do that, and but my first will be a feature, But on the way to signing the contract, I get a call that the director brought his buddy in, and they want to use him as a composer, and I was totally crushed and devastated. And my wife said, "What are you upset about? You just got a record deal the same week. So why are you worrying about this stupid movie that's never going to see the light of day anyway, past video?" And my understanding was, what the record is just a business card so I can get more movie digs. But the whole thing changed with the success of Pacific Coast Highway. All of a sudden, I was a contemporary jazz artist. I was invited on big festivals, and it really took off from there.
Wonderful. Neil, that's a great background story. So let's play the first song for tonight. Let's play Pacific Coast Highway, and then we'll come back again, okay?
All right.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Yeah, you have some fans already who are
Yeah.
already tuning in. It was, I remember when I first heard this on my way up Highway 1 and thought, wow, this is about me.
Yeah.
He was driving on Highway 1 when he first heard this song.
Yeah,
So,
I just typed back in the chat room that this song was called G major, B minor, all the way to till mastering, until I had to come up with a better title. That was because the first two chords are G major and B minor. It was my working title, and I had to kind of reflect on what does it make me feel like. What does it, what are the emotion there in the song? And Pacific Coast Highway came to mind. And over the years, I heard so many compliments that it's right on. It's the perfect song for taking the top down and cruising out Highway 1 down the coast.
yeah, I think that's what the listener just said. When he first heard this song back in 2005, he was on the Pacific Coast Highway. Yeah, and he thought it just resonates. Here's another guy, Joe Page, love the groove. So,
Cool.
you got people who are tuning in and listening. So let's go back. Let's talk a little bit more. Let me just pull up my notes here. Okay. Let me get back to where we are. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of your collaborations. I know we talked about George Benson briefly.
Yeah.
How did you had so many artists playing on your LP. How did you get all of them?
Yeah, so that was the concept of on my first record that my friend, the producer, brought to the project. He said, nobody knows who Nils is. In order to make you known, we're going to have to surround you by a group of established musicians. He put together the Nils and the West Coast All-Star Band, and he also got me in touch with all the musicians to record on the record. If you're looking at the album credits of Blue Planet, I mean, it's from Gerald Albright, George Benson, Saida Garrett, Shanti Moore, Carl Anderson, Bobby Lyle, Ricky Lawson, Abe Laboriel, Nathan East. Everybody is on this record. And he happened to be George Benson's nephew, so he was in the circle of knowing, having phone numbers for everybody. And that's how he got in touch with these people, and he talked to his uncle about like the duet we did. It was George had the song laying around that was unused in the studio, and he said, why don't you let my boy Nils use this track and do a duet with him? Let me convert it. And George was, I don't know who this Nils is, So the story goes where we went. George came to LA one day, so we met him, went out to dinner, and then we walked back to his hotel room. And I asked George, what kind of acts do you play? And he gave me the Ibanez answer because he has the George Benson Ibanez model. But then when we were in his room, he kind of disappeared in his suite in another room, came back with a $50,000 Taquisto jazz guitar.
Jeez.
And he puts it in my lap and says, okay, play. So I'm sitting in a hotel room with $50,000 guitar on my thing, trying not to edge it on the table anywhere. And George Benson, like 3 feet in front of me, trying to see. And so I froze just for a split second, and then I said, what the heck? And I just started jamming on it and just started playing away. And then the greatest thing happened. George stopped me and said, whoa, what is that? Show me what you did there. And I got to show George Benson a new lick. and it kind of opened the eyes to that George, who we consider to be one that forgot more than most of us ever learn, is still soaking up new ideas, always tries to learn something new, which is great about music anyway. So about instrument like guitar, you always can learn some more on that instrument. And then we traded, and he played some stuff that was just unbelievable. I'm trying to figure out what he's doing, and so we traded stuff back and forth and had a great time. And then he agreed to do the duet with me based on that meeting.
It's funny. There was a concert that George Harrison's son did with the song "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," and they had an
Yeah.
all-star band.
Yeah.
You know, and it had Prince was one of the players, and Jeff Lynne. You know, it was just an amazing all-star band, and Prince did a great solo on the guitar in that song. And at the end, he throws his guitar into the audience, and afterwards, somebody who was emceeing asked him, "Do you always throw your expensive guitars away?" And he said, "No." He said, "My guitars were lost by the airport. That was $100 guitar." And he played it, and that you would never know it was $100 guitar the way he played it.
Well, because 90% of the sound is in your fingers.
Exactly. And you know, and he proved that. He really proved it that night. You know.
Yeah, I know.
So you know, when you have a $50,000 guitar in your lap, what do you do next?
Yeah. Yeah. The instrument is just the last little few percent, you know.
It is, you know, it really is. And
Yeah.
so after George Benson, you know, who else did you have to build a relationship with like George?
Well, you know, through all this recording process, I got close with Larry Dunn from Earth, Wind and Fire. I had him guest on some of my records. I did get to meet Jeff Lorber over the years. And he was one of the guys that, you know, I knew from the album covers, which is the great thing. I mean, I know all these cats from studying the record covers, the credits on records back in Munich. And now I got to really meet them and actually work with them in the studio. You know,
Wow, it's a great story.
So I did over the years. We had George Clinton in the house,
Wow.
in our home studio. That was my producer friend. He had him in the house, but I was there with him, and he was out of it. I mean, he took a break and was up on the front lawn looking for the mothership. But when he was in the studio and laid down the beat, it was just you could feel the funk coming out from him. It's just like, you know, he can't help it but be funky.
You know, when you got to LA, it was, you know, there were so many great bands, Earth, Wind and Fire, who you've been mentioning, Tower of Power, War. You know, all these bands were West Coast bands in jazz, and you know, they were doing such totally different things. So you really came at a good time, you know, to build your jazz skills.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, and I tried to elaborate and I tried to build on that. You know, it's like some of the cats that I got that are in that period that I met, you know, or started whenever I could, because they are pricey musicians. They're total pros, so you cannot afford them ever. But when I could, or do some kind of a deal with them, I would like to get somebody to do something on my record, like Larry Dunn playing piano on a song, or having Eric Marienthal played a solo on a track, and that kind of stuff, you know.
You know, there's so much I want to talk to you about tonight. I'm going to definitely have you come back again, you know, down the road a little bit when you're available.
Yeah.
But I want to play another song for everybody, and then I'll try to catch up on some of the things I wanted to talk to you about. This has been really interesting, learning about, you know, your evolution as a musician and how you do your craft. So let's play "Don't You Dare." Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that song and when you recorded it?
Well, I recorded it last year. That's it's a track on the new album, the current album, "Feeling Good," and it's probably my favorite track on the record. I mean, if I have a favorite, it's really sexy, funky, kind of like a laid back tune that has just incredible vibe. I got Mitch Foreman on piano, who is one of my favorite keyboard players, and it just has this really funky kind of backbeat. You know, it's hard to describe. You got to hear it. But I combined a loop with a drum track to get that really interesting kind of R&B bottom end to it. And then my bass player Aaron Mason, he did like some really nice slap work on it to keep it up there. And yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than it's really funky, sexy, laid back, and one of my favorites.
Wonderful. Let's play it for everybody. Okay. This is "Don't Dare." and it's by Nils. Nils, I'm sorry, I told you Nils. Nils
Good.
Jiptner. Here it is. Oh, that's such a great funk track. I love it. And here's somebody, Lenny Loman. I followed you for years. I love when you lay down the funk.
Oh,
And
thank you.
there's Jesse Zappa. Great timing on the guitar work. It's what you don't play that makes the song so great.
That's right. That's right. It's always important to have the right pocket and leave the right pauses.
Yeah. We got a lot of fans out here paying attention tonight, enjoying the music.
Thanks.
Let me ask you another kind of question quickly, and then we can move on to another song. If you could collaborate with any musician, composer, vocalist, lyricist, producer from any century, anywhere
Uh-huh.
in the world, who would you want to collaborate with and why?
Oh God, there's several. I mean, on my bucket list is still to work with Chaka Khan.
Okay.
Al Jarreau, I missed. It would be another guy who unfortunately passed away already.
Yeah.
But then going back in my early rock days, I would have loved to be able to work or at least somehow have interaction with Hendrix, of course, or some of these early 70s groups, But I think one thing I would have really loved to be part of is the making of Dark Side of the Moon with Alan Parsons, producer.
Yes.
And to me, it is one of the best productions ever. I mean, if you put on old records and you hear they're old, I put that record on today, and it could have be recorded last year.
Yeah.
It's such a stellar production, and in those days, it wasn't, you couldn't nudge stuff around with the computer. You had really, he had to pull some tricks out of his hat to get all that done and create that atmosphere and the vibe and the concept of a continuous record. And that would have been a great collaboration, being part of that process.
Were you a Steely Dan fan?
Oh yeah, too. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I wouldn't put any collaboration away. I would have always, whenever there's good music to be made, it would be fun to be part of it.
Definitely, I understand that. Well, let's play another one of your songs, okay? I want to try and get to more of your music, and then we can always come back and chat a little bit more. I want to play "That's the Way of the World." So why don't you tell people a little bit about this one, and we'll play it for everybody.
Well, that was the first single of the new record. It's still up #1 on some of the charts. It made it up to #2 on Billboard. Yep. It's my first Earth, Wind & Fire cover, and I don't do a lot of covers. I write songs, and so when I do a cover, I always look for something that I can bring to the song that is not an original. And even though Earth, Wind & Fire is definitely one of my favorite bands, I never wanted to do an Earth, Wind & Fire song because I didn't know what could you possibly improve on that, or it would sound like just a karaoke track with putting a guitar on top. And I had no concept. I mean, for me, it was just, you could only make it worse than what it already is. So I never attempted one. But last year I was in Munich. I went back and forth quite a bit, and half of my new record I recorded in Munich. I have a little studio at my parents' house. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine in his basement, and we were basically jamming to YouTube videos. And he played that Earth, Wind & Fire live version of "That's the Way in the World." We played along with it and say, "Man, this stuff feels good on the guitar,"
Yeah.
And I got so excited about it. Let me try to put a spin on that stuff, isn't it? Find like the perfect groove for it. And I just put it together, and it turned out really well, and pulled in my gang, like Clydeen on the keyboards and Johnny Britt doing the horn thing, and both of them adding the extra little vocal parts on there. And it was just fun to do. And I'm very proud of the track, and I'm glad that it did well on radio.
That's wonderful. Yeah, do you know Greg Adams from East Bay Soul?
Yeah, I know Greg.
Yeah, Greg's been on the show, and he was one of the founders of Tower of Power. And that's one of my all-time loving groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, California music and jazz is just so tight. It's a really tight community.
Yeah, what a bunch of good stuff there.
Yeah, there is. So let's play "That's the Way of the World." It's a top 5 hit on Billboard, and it's on several other charts. It's on Media Base and some other charts too. So let's play it, and we'll come back and chat a little more. Oh, that's such a great track. You know,
It's a great song.
you got some great comments. It takes a big man to play Earth, Wind, and Fire and pull it off and make it your own. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it is, as I'm saying, I'm not taking this lightly. It's like you can't mess with music like that and just give it a half as effort. You got to really
yeah.
do something with it.
Well, here's another comment from, I guess it was Lou Redbone. Turning EWF horns to guitar is no small feat, and you did it, bro.
Well, thank you too. Yeah.
Yeah, you got some really great people listening in and really enjoying your music.
Yeah.
Look, Niels, I'd love to do this a lot longer with you tonight. We're running over a little bit already. It's been a wonderful evening with you, and there are so many more questions to ask you. So I hope you come back again and
My
visit with
pleasure.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do it.
Yeah, we have over 180,000 people tuning in just to my station tonight to hear you. So you're getting a lot of people.
Hello, everybody.
They're from all around the world. I don't know where, but they're from all over the place. Anyway,
that's a nice thing about the digital streaming age.
it is. It's wonderful because unlike FM that has a narrow radius, this goes everywhere.
Right.
So, well, look, it's been wonderful. And I want the listeners have enjoyed it. And why don't you tell everybody where they can see you coming up in the near future, how they can become a fan, how they can get in contact with you if they want you to perform somewhere. Why don't you just tell everybody some of your places they can find you?
Well, you can follow me at Nils Guitar. You see up here, nilsguitar.com. Yeah. That's how you can join the mailing list. That's my sign-up site for the mailing list. And if you want to follow me on YouTube or Facebook at Nils Guitar, same spelling, Nils Guitar, one word. I do a show every Saturday, not quite with the same audience yet that you have, but we're doing Facebook Live. It started during COVID and evolved from doing it on one iPhone now with working with 3 cameras. 6 o'clock on the LA time, and I post it afterwards on YouTube. Basically just playing requests and telling some stories about my songs and playing from my repertoire. I got over 150 songs up there that we can choose from, so it's not always the same stuff. I do have a website, an artist website, that's nilsmusic.com, where you can listen and download the record from directly and or contact me regarding production work or any other work. Also, my booking agent's contact is on that website. My booking agent is Corey Mason. Ready to work, willing to work, and then just looking forward to doing good music, man.
And you give lessons too.
I do give guitar lessons. I used to teach quite a bit. I still have a couple of students that were doing virtual lessons. Not as much as I used to do, but I always felt good about teaching. What I like about it is when you explain a musical concept over and over, it becomes very crystal clear in your mind. So it's not only a benefit to the students, also to the teacher. My concepts become clearer to me once I have to explain them several times. So, and I always think good to pass on rather than keeping the knowledge just hidden in here. I want to just spread it out and pass it on, just be a vessel.
It's funny you mentioned this. I've been a university professor for many years in graduate school, and when I would answer questions and say things, it would hit me, and I would realize I just said that. You have these moments of clarity when you teach other people. You're absolutely right. Well, let's close out by playing "Caught in the Groove." Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about that song, and we'll close out the evening with that.
"Caught in the Groove" started with my Christmas song for my Christmas album, Jingle Bells. I was working on the Christmas album, and I actually looped one bar. You can do that in the computer. You just repeat one bar over and over seamlessly, because I was trying to hear there was some weird noise in there and try to isolate it and try to concentrate on it. But when it kept playing back, and it was just one bar, and it became so hypnotic. So this is an amazing groove, So I kind of cut that one bar out, stripped the music away, and put it aside and build a new song around it.
Wow.
And that is caught in the groove because I was caught by that groove, and put a whole new song on top of that.
When you come,
yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It came out during COVID, and that the record really saved my behind, because I had no more gigs all of a sudden, none at all.
Sure. Yeah.
But the song hit #1 on Billboard, and the second song from the same record also hit #1. So I got nice royalties coming in from radio, while I was not able to work any other ways, So
Wonderful.
that kind of kept me alive. So I'm always thankful for that, for the success of that track.
When you next time you come back, I want to spend a lot of time talking about songwriting and just so many other things. It's been just a wonderful evening.
It would be my pleasure. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I really am glad you will. Let's play now. This is "Caught in the Groove" by Neels.
From the same album.
Wow,
Quite hypnotic, isn't it?
it is. Here's a comment from a listener. Best evening I've had all week. Tomorrow I'm stocking up on your music. That's Bob Harrison. Thank you, Bob, for listening in. And here's Leela Lou. Love the track. I've heard it all week, and now I got to meet you.
Thank you. I hope to meet you all one day somewhere on a live show on the road, or tune into my show on Saturday nights. And follow me Facebook and Instagram too, and YouTube. And let's keep up the conversation.
Wonderful. Niels, again, I can't thank you enough. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you,
and
Mel.
we certainly will have you back in 2025.
I'm looking forward to it.
Great. You have a great evening.
You take care. Thanks.
Good night. Well, everybody, it was a great night. And it was just wonderful having Niels on my show. I wanted to have him on forever. Next week, we have another great charting artist, Mac Royals, who's now charting on a lot of R&B charts. So tune in next week and enjoy the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. Have a great week, everybody.
What does it mean to get the back?
I'm Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour.
My name is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.